strings.
What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now that we got back to Colorado, some events are coming up. So when we were in Connecticut, there was Gridlife. Here in Colorado, there is also Gridlife, which is coming up in about a week from today that I'm filming this video. So about 7 days from now. Last year, we did a crazy last minute build where we essentially built a 3UZ VVTi swap in my S14 drift car. It worked, but it was kind of slow. It was really complicated because of the headers and the steering shaft. It's like a small rod engine, so you can't just turbo it and then even turboing it. A lot of things to do in a very short amount of time. And since that engine has been in my S14, it just hasn't felt right. The plan was initially to turbo it and do some other stuff, but I think overall, I think I have a better plan. I want to put my 2JZ that I stole out of my S14 drift car and I put into this. This is a 2015 Ford Mustang. This thing was originally an EcoBoost automatic. I wanted to try a new chassis, the big body drift car, and this thing, honestly, it worked really, really well. I think this chassis needs more torque. It needs a big displacement engine, probably weighs 12 to 1,500 pounds more than my S14, and it had the same exact setup. I have some plans for this thing with potentially a bigger displacement motor in the future, but for right now, I would like to pull this engine out, get it into my S14 drift car within this next week, and make it to Gridlife. Guess we're gonna get to work. If you guys want a little update on the rainy day, Supra, still over there, but it's not a rainy day yet. So this is the engine in question right here. I actually already came over here previously and I stole the turbo off of it, ECU, and the plug and play ECU master adapter, but I actually already talked to Wiring Specialties today and I have a Wiring Specialties Pro Series harness coming for this thing, which I'm pretty stoked about. So now draining the coolant out of it, and I got my dad over here. Dad, how you doing?
Good.
Brought in the big dogs to help me pull this thing out. We're just gonna continue pulling it apart. So we got to the shop. Now this thing is out of the truck, unloaded, pretty much ready to start disassembling and getting ready for the new parts. So there's a couple things that we need to switch over. We'll have to play with a couple things, but lots of little details, lots of little things to figure out, but I'm gonna get this thing torn apart. All right, so the engine is all cleaned up, got it all pressure washed, cleaned up. Decided to just set the turbo back on it because I had to see it again. And I took a picture of it, put it in our VIP group, and it seems like a lot of people are really stoked on this thing. I also did a vote on Instagram on what engine you guys think actually belongs in the S14, and it was like 70% of people said that a 2JZ belongs back in there, and I pretty much agree. That means that we have to get this engine out of here. This is the 3UZ VVTi drive-by-wire throttle body. This is out of a like a 02 Lexus LS430 sedan. This thing can come out of here, and since now that it is out of an S14, we actually have an S14 over here on the other side of the shop, which has a cage and was kind of supposed to be like my backup shell a long time ago if I were to ever like wreck my S14 and then like needed to reshell it or something. That was when I was taking drifting like a little bit more serious, but we have this shell over here. That is always an option. We could throw that engine in there. is out. Sitting next to it, I don't know if this is the big brother, if this is the little brother, how this whole situation worked. I feel like this is obviously a heavier engine. That's aluminum block, aluminum heads. This is a cast iron block. I always considered this thing kind of like the V8 2JZ version of like that Toyota built, just because it has, you know, the variable valve timing. I was really stoked about this 3UZ. Like, now that I have it out, I'm like almost second guessing it. I'm like, man, what if we would have just spent this time fabricating a turbo kit for this thing this week instead of swapping this over? Now I got to push this thing over to the other side of the shop and get to swapping that rear sump oil pan over with this front sump oil pan. Yesterday I got the oil pan all swapped on here. Front sump, we ended up having to tap this little thing right here just to put that 10AN drain fitting on there, because this pan was technically the one out of an IS 300. So now the goal is we have a new RTEC manifold that is showing up today. We have a new intake manifold that is, where'd it go? Sure. So we have, this is one of those aftermarket manifolds, the cheaper version of it, but I guess they're decent. No idle air control, has all these fittings on the bottom for, like, you know, your boost and your vacuum and all your other things like that. O-rings on the gaskets.
Not a bad looking manifold. 90 mil throttle body.
90 millimeter throttle body, and the Wiring Specialties harness is showing up today. We have a lot of work to do. The goal is to get this thing sitting in the car within the next hour, let's say. So Sean's working on the intake manifold, getting all that stuff pulled off. I'm gonna pull the exhaust manifold off of it just so it's super simple. Once that other exhaust manifold gets in here, we just stick it on and hook up the weight. Oh, we got wastegates coming today too.
Hopefully.
2 brand new wastegates.
Hopefully all of it comes.
Hopefully, I mean, really, we're kind of relying on all of it to come.
UPS is going on strike, buddy. So.
Are they?
I saw some on the news about them going on strike, yeah.
Oh, that's not good. This engine bay is pretty much ready to accept a 2J. It's a little bit dirty, it's a little bit grungy. I would like to repaint it. I painted this thing in my dad's garage, like, pretty sure it was 10 years ago. I painted this engine bay. We have the brake booster delete, which is gonna work really well with that intake manifold, because I'm pretty sure you can't run a booster with that manifold. Lots of things to do. See how far we get today. All right, boys, a little update. What day is it? It is Thursday at noon. So this is a manifold that I've had on this thing for the past couple years. And this is like one of those like $99 eBay, like cast, you know, made in overseas manifold. And it works, you know, they work good for what they are, but they don't give you that JZ Symphony. And so RTEC actually overnighted this manifold from Canada. Look at this thing. So this is the cast tubular, like stainless manifolds. So it's literally like if Toyota was from the factory gonna put a Garrett GTX 3582 on it, this is the manifold that they would make with dual wastegate outlets. So our 44 millimeter V-band flanges, a divided T4 inlet for the turbo. You could use all your OEM hardware and you could access all of the OEM hardware things. That is a super sick manifold, and that is what my JZ has always been missing. So that way we could get that nice JZ Symphony out of this thing. So that means we have a lot more fabrication to do. We basically decided we're gonna skip the dyno today. It was already tuned. We have to, and it was already tuned in the Mustang. So now we just have to put some E85 in here, fuel lines. We're working through it, but I think we're gonna make it to Gridlife tomorrow and drift this thing. I finally got a driver's pass. I've been pulling strings. I don't know why I do this, but I pulled some strings and they worked. Now we just gotta get this thing done. so downpipe is almost done. Look at this thing. I just got to do the final weld on it. This was the exhaust that we kind of made last minute. The back end is a HKS, like I think it's a super dragger. As you can tell, it's been drugged, but it's got a big old tip on it. It's got 3.5 inch rear section, neck down to about a 3 inch right here with a resonator. So this thing is gonna be really quiet out of the exhaust at least. The thing that's gonna be really cool is we have these two Turbo Smart 45mm hyper gates right there. I have the little down pipes coming off of them right here. So these things are gonna be straight piped. This turbo with the speed sensor removed is just gonna be like all whistle. So it's gonna sound like a jet as you're like cruising up, and then as soon as you get into boost, it's literally just gonna scream out of the wastegates. But like when you're driving it around, it's just gonna be so smooth and all turbo. It's gonna be a unique sound, especially for a drift car, because it'll just be so mellow until you're ripping it, and it's gonna just be like super aggressive. So pretty stoked about that. Got a lot of stuff to do still, but making really, really good progress. Me and Sean got the clutch bled. We got the fuel system all hooked up. We got the tie rods and everything hooked back up. We have the oil cooler hooked back up. Power steering is all hooked up. The intercooler is gonna need some work, so I'm gonna have to mess with that right after we figure out this whole hot side. We also need to plug in the wiring specialties harness, do a couple things like that. Plug it in, and then actually wire it into the chassis, into like my fuse panel and all that stuff over there, which that should technically go pretty quick. We'll see, gotta get her done. But right now it is 7 o'clock at night, and the event, technically it's open right now and people are loading in their trucks and trailers, which I feel like we were about in this situation last year with the 3UZ. But the cool thing about this thing is, once this thing gets like running and driving, since it's already tuned, it's literally gonna make 500 and some horsepower. And because this engine was already in here, it was already tuned, I'm pretty stoked. So we're gonna get her done, take it for a rip down the street, blow the tires off it. We're gonna, so we went ahead inside the car and did some wiring. So basically with the wiring specialties harness, you have this chassis interface. Basically buy this harness from them and it will plug into the 2J. Then it has this chassis integration harness. So I did the universal one because I have a switch panel. It's pretty interesting how I have this whole car like wired up, because I actually have like a switch for the fuel pump that goes to a relay. Whereas with the ECU master, I don't have to have any of that. I basically just have you push the ignition on, and as soon as it sees cranking, turns the fuel pump on, which I don't have set up yet. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that right now. When this car was together initially, it was all stock ECU. So I had all of the gauges. So I had tachometer, I had oil pressure, water temp, boost, voltage, and air fuel. There was no gauges. There was no options for like a CAN gauge or anything like that. And I had switches for everything. I had a switch for the fuel pump. And so right now we have our, we're in neutral. We have our fuel pump. We have our cranking. Uh-oh. So here we have a running unit. We got oil pressure, got battery voltage, IAT coolant, we have TPS, map sensor, basically have everything. Seems like it runs pretty decent. Initially when I first started it, I forgot that I have the sequential injection now with the R35 coils, so it ran really bad and it sounded terrible for a minute. You can hear the injectors. This manifold like makes them really loud. It sounds like a typewriter, and this turbo sounds insane now. It's interesting because normally this car was so loud with the exhaust, whereas right now it's pretty mellow. But I'll go ahead and I'll give you guys a rev. So So it sounds really good. It is currently 4 in the morning. That's where we're at with it. Need to hook up a vacuum line to the fuel pressure. I think I have the wideband correcting like 10%, so the air fuel is going all over. So over here in fueling, I have Yugo feedback. So 10%, we'll just turn that off. So that way it's not sitting there like adding and taking away fuel, adding and taking away fuel, especially when it's idling. But it sounds so good. Like it sounds like a 2J now, and it sounds way rowdier. I don't know if it's the throttle response, just because it's a mechanical throttle body, or it has a 90mm throttle body on it instead of like a little one, but it is insanely responsive. It sounds really good. All right guys, so I went home last night, or I guess technically this morning at about 4:45 in the morning, but she's done. Me and Sean have been thrashing on this thing all morning.
Look at the shop.
I mean, honestly, it's pretty clean compared to what it was a couple minutes ago.
Looks great.
So how's that Monster treating you?
Third one.
Third one today. It is on E85. We have the catch can set up on it right now, the air filter set up, we have the charge piping, we have the 3-port boost controller. The only last thing that I need to do is actually connect it to the can gauge. So in the car right now, you can see I have all the wiring down there. I kind of zip tied it a little bit. We're running a little bit behind. It's 4 o'clock. Yeah, if we were here yesterday at this time, it would have been great. I always say it, if we would have had one more day, we would have been doing so much better. But we're so close right now. So you can see we have the BTI can gauge. So we just hit this guy right here, make sure she's in neutral. Fuel. It usually takes 2. There we go. Tranny makes a bunch of noises and things like that, but this thing sounds freaking good. It sounds so good. I'm gonna give you guys a little rip. I'm gonna go ahead and back it out. We're gonna clean up our power steering mess, and then I'm gonna mess with a couple of the settings with the BTI gauge. Sean's gonna load some tools, take it for a test drive, load it in the trailer.
Rip.
The last drift session of the day is at 7:30, so we're gonna make that. But yeah, I'm gonna back this thing out, see how it looks outside, and probably pressure wash the engine because we lost a lot of power steering fluid. All right guys, so I just got back from the first drive and I thought we were gonna do a first drive without any issues, but I think just due to this thing having a little bit more power, it melted this thing right there. So this has never happened before because we never had a catch can, but look at that thing. That thing got pretty melted, huh?
Yeah, we kind of knew that was gonna happen, but kind of forgot about fixing it.
So this is some sleeving that has a Velcro on it, so we're just gonna throw that on it. This same exact thing happened to the Supra. You just gotta do that and then it's good to go. That is going to be it for this video, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching this thing. Let me know if you like it. In the comments, leave a thumbs up if you like us basically doing almost a full build in one video. This was a ton of work. I can't even tell you how many hours we have all week. Basically all week it's been thrashing on this thing. And even last night I was just up so freaking late. It should all be worth it. We are headed to Gridlife right now. So stay tuned for the next video. Appreciate you guys watching. See you in the next one.